Baseball's designated hitter is broken down. The Fall Classic is becoming an instant classic here in 2025, and the NBA just got hit by a seismic event that could derail the integrity of the sport itself. That's coming up next. It's just... It's the Lurks Lessons Show, your weekly deep dive into the most impactful stories from the professional sporting leagues around the country. We'll analyze, discuss, and uncover the lessons they offer. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Jeff Lurkey, and if this is your first time, welcome to Lurks Lessons. What is Lurks Lessons? Well, it is a sports educational platform that helps you learn sports through animated content here on YouTube, and with this show being posted also on Spotify. So if you like what you hear or see, think about sticking around, okay? And yes, I did read that because I wanted to make sure I got it right. I'm just tired of messing up. But hey, speaking about messing up, I have some corrections that need to be addressed from last week's episode. Yes, indeed. From the very first episode, you heard me say it, and I'll say it again, that I'm on this journey with you. I don't know everything, okay? So there are times where I think I will say something off the cuff, and then I have to do a fact check and be like, wait, that was incorrect. So one of the lower hanging fruits was in last week's episode, I said the Toronto Blue Jays hasn't been back to the World Series since the 94 season. Well, technically that's true because the 1994 season was a strike and the World Series didn't happen. But I should have said 1993 because the Jays won in 92 and 93, not 94. Nobody played in 94. So correction number one. Correction number two is when I spoke about the batting average and breaking that down, I kind of went into the designated hitter role that Shohei Ohtani, that we were kind of like doing a player spotlight on, about how he had to manage, playing in the American League where the National League, because he plays for the Dodgers, and how they don't have the DH position player, which that is also incorrect because back in 2022, the MLB decided to do away with different leagues of like designated hitter and made the designated hitter position universal. So after I realized that particular mistake last Thursday, I cringed because I'm like, oh gosh. And if you know anything about YouTube and how the algorithm works or anything of that sort, I'd rather be embarrassed and get called out, especially by, I don't know how to say it, but VNMSNAK 4686. And you were completely right. And you have every right to call me out on that. And I open that invitation to everybody who watches or listens to the show. Please call me out when I'm wrong, because at the end of the day, we want to learn together, okay? And by learning, you need to learn not only from your mistakes that your boy's eating right now, but we also need to learn the proper information going forward, because again, the heart of this show is so that way I can empower you to have those conversations in real time around your circles of influence, or better yet, your circles, whether it's at the job or friends and family, okay? So all that to say, whenever I mess up going forward and in these episodes/shows, I'm going to call myself out the beginning of the following episode. So those are done. Phew, we got through that together. Great. Moving on. And speaking of designated hitter, that's the first topic we're going to talk about, because as I was sitting there thinking about like, wow, did I make a mistake? I did some more research and I was like, wow, the DH role in baseball's history really isn't that commonplace. Back in the early 1900s, one of the managers even thought about doing the DH in general, and they didn't do it. So all that to say is I'm going to start the show off today about talking about the designated hitter role. A lot of you are here because of Shohei Ohtani, and rightfully so. The dude is doing some great, cool things right now in the World Series, which we'll get to. But the designated hitter is a player who bats in place of another position player. So it's more commonly the pitcher, all right? It was adopted in the American League in 1973 and had a 3-year trial run. And then just to not to like go into it, but there's a lot of history that involves around this DH. Okay. So I'm just going to give you the Spark Note versions. All right. So after that 3-year trial run, in 1973, the AL kept the DH, where the NL was like, nah, we're making our pitchers hit. Okay. Again, the DH can be assigned to anybody who's fielding and just bat for them, but it's just been commonly for the pitcher. And the reason why is because the pitcher is literally the main line of defense. Okay. They're the ones that is throwing the ball from the mound to the plate. They're the first line of defense. Then your infield, then your outfield. If your pitcher, or ace, if you will, is up to plate, they are susceptible to batting injuries. That could be a wild pitch. They get hit, like, 95, 100 mile an hour fastball to your body. That would hurt. And then also just running the bases and getting tackled. Because again, like if you got tackled, if you will, like if you're running into a defender, okay? So the American League wanted to separate and protect their pitchers, essentially, but also give opportunities for players that are really good at batting, and they would just focus on offense. And the numbers showed in the American League that the offensive production really did rise in that trial year period from 73 to 75, okay? There's also a lot of data that goes on with that. Like when it comes to the World Series, like during that trial period of time from 73 to 75 in the World Series, the DH was not in the World Series because that's interleague play at that time. So from 76 to 86, the World Series actually used the DH on both sides on the even numbered years, while the pitchers batted in odd number years. Okay. But from 86 onward, the World Series used it for the home team. So if the NL was the home team, the DH wasn't used. If it was for the AL, it was used. That format, whoever was the home team, it was adopted for interleague play that happened in 1997. Because prior to 1997, so think about it, from 1903 to 1997, almost like 100 years, the National League and the American League did not play each other in the regular season unless it was the World Series. So that's fascinating, all right? Interleague play happens in 97, and then you go into the 2020, was the first year that the National League used the DH for health and safety concerns. And then in 21, and this is where we get to the Ohtani, kind of like his particular influence of the game itself. An AL team voluntarily declined to use a DH in their starting lineup, and that was the first since 1976, where at the time Ohtani was playing for the LA Angels, the American League team in Los Angeles, because they wanted their starting pitcher, Shohei Ohtani, in the lineup, okay? Just to show how big of a unicorn this dude is. Like, this guy took a long-standing DH role for the American League, and they were like, no, this dude is so good at pitching and hitting, we want him in the lineup, all right? So that kind of was like pretty wild, and I think that also started that ball rolling of like, look, we're just going to make the DH universal, both NL and AL in general. And I think Commissioner Rob Manfred announced in 22 that moving forward that the DH would be used at large. So why is this happening is to allow pitchers to focus on pitching and reduce injury risk from hitting. Okay. I think it's better that way, to be honest, because that way offensive production could go up, and then the pitchers can also just focus on pitching, because it is very difficult to do both at the same time. That's why, like I said in last week's episode, that the pitcher's batting average is like 1 to 100 to like maybe 175. Like it's not high. And that's why they usually are batting at the lower end of the lineup, because typically managers for their batting lineup from 1 to 9, they will put their best hitters between 1 to 5, essentially. And then the bottom half of the order is usually your players that are not as good at batting. And you would see, number 9 is usually the pitcher. So That's where I was currently in my mindset last week. But then, yeah, I did not realize in that moment of recording was like, wait a minute. Yeah, back in 22, Manfred made it a universal DH. So that whole home or if you're in the American League or a National League, doesn't matter now. The DH is a keepsake, essentially, in baseball. Now, in tandem of what the DH is, when that universal DH has been implemented, you may hear this rule called the Ohtani Rule. Now, it's informally called this, but it's pretty much an exception now to the DH, because if you have a starting pitcher who also is going to be the DH for hitting, now that the DH is now universal, back in the day, like whenever a pitcher would be relieved from the mound, usually after 6 innings or so, a reliever would come in. That reliever would then take that DH spot, or better yet, that reliever would then also be at the plate, because this happens with pinch runners. Whenever a sub actually happens within the MLB or baseball in general, that player doesn't play the rest of the game. So that's where, when this universal DH came into play, people were like, well, not necessarily people, like the managers of Shohei Ohtani were like, so you're telling me then Ohtani will have to play, if he starts to pitch, he has to play the entire game, so that way we can utilize his offensive prowess at the bat, or at the plate, excuse me. So the Ohtani rule came into play, whereas it will state, and I'll read this, if the pitcher is removed from the mound, they can stay in the game to continue as the DH, whereas before, they had to either be replaced in the lineup entirely or move to a defensive position, and the team would lose the DH for the rest of the game. Okay? So the Ohtani rule is in effect. There's a huge debate about this, because essentially in the all 30 teams of the MLB, this literally affects one player, Shohei Ohtani. Okay? Because again, that I've kind of beaten this with a dead horse. Like, it is so rare that a pitcher is as dominant as they are a hitter. It's just, it just doesn't happen. Like, Babe Ruth is probably one of the few up there. And again, I'm not going to sit here and know that I know all baseball history, which I don't. But I know Babe Ruth back for the Red Sox, he would pitch and also hit at the same time. And so, like, I think he had like a World Series record for a long-standing scoreless innings because of him at the mound, but also did damage at the plate. So what we're seeing right now with Shohei is just the dude literally changed baseball. Okay, like he made the DH universal, where the NL, the National League, has been so against it for so many years that it has now become commonplace. We're talking about a sport that has been around since the late 1800s. And I mean, let that sink in, okay? What we are witnessing is something that doesn't happen a lot, okay? We have seen other generational players literally change the game that they play in. Tiger Woods when it comes to golf, Steph Curry when it comes to the NBA. And what I mean by that particular example is, back in the day, and I played basketball, when you have a fast break, you go for a layup, because going for a layup, your odds of making that basket so close to the basket is much higher than doing what a Steph Curry would do, where he would just knows that I'm going to go ahead and shoot a three because I am lights out when I shoot a three, plus 3 points is more than 2 points. Like, he changed the game to the point now all NBA players are looking at, okay, threes are how you win games now. Like, that's why our games in the NBA are like 120 plus almost. So I digress with that. Shohei Ohtani is changing the game before our eyes, literally. And so if you haven't taken my advice in watching the World Series, as we segue into the next topic, you need to start doing that. And if you were able to watch last night's game, if you stayed up here in the East Coast, like I think that it ended 10 minutes prior to midnight in Pacific time. So if you were willing to stay up in the wee hours in the morning to watch in a historic and instant classic Game 3, your boy here didn't. I was way too tired. I stayed up until I think the 6th inning. 18 innings. And the Dodgers win on a walk-off home run by Freddie Freeman, which is amazing. Like they're now, LA is up. Actually, let's go ahead to check out the bracket. LA is now up 2-1, and it's going so far to my prediction. I really think the Dodgers are going to win this one in 6 games. But last night's game, like, this is crazy, okay? So according to ESPN Insights, there was 609 pitches thrown, 37 runners were left on base, 25 position players were used, and 19 pitchers were used in that incredible game, okay? Now, we talked about Ohtani, and we're going to continue talking about Ohtani. What he did, it's just good grief, man. All right. We said at bats, batting average, right, from last week. Batting average is how many times you're at the plate and how many hits you make, essentially. All right, so if you go 1 for 4, that's 250 because that's 25%, okay? The thing that does not account to batting average is walks, okay? So there's another category or statistic called plate appearances, PA, okay? Ohtani was doing so much damage at the plate when he was at the beginning of the game. The dude hit 2 home runs. He hit 2 doubles, all right? He scored 3 RBIs and he had 3 runs, okay? The manager for the Blue Jays was like, I'm done with this. Like, we can't keep having him, be such a force at the plate. So what they decided to do was they intentionally walked him. So he had 9 plate appearances, 5 walks. 4 of those were intentional. The brother got on base every single time he went to the plate. Every time you get somebody on base, that increases your chances of scoring, right? So this dude, when he was able to actually hit the ball, was 4 for 4 essentially, 2 home runs, 2 doubles, okay? And he got on base every single time. I'm at a loss. I'm just at a loss. Like, this dude is just incredible, man. And I feel bad for Toronto because we may start seeing a lot more of this going forward to games 4 onward. We may see Toronto intentionally walk Ohtani because it's better for him to be on base and face the rest of the team and possibly get like double plays or a quick a ground out or something and take away Ohtani because the dude is just, oh my gosh, man. Like, it's incredible. But all that to say is, like, game 1, Toronto came up. They came out swinging, no pun intended. They came out swinging bottom of the 6th, scored 9 runs. They won that game 11-4. So they took a quick 1-0 lead, but, Dodgers, I can see, again, like I shared from the very beginning, I can see the Blue Jays, again, with their offensive weapons, they will get at least 2 games. But it just seems the Dodgers are on a whole nother level. But just to show, here's some other statistics from baseball.reference.com. Total runs right now, Toronto has 17 to the Dodgers 15. For hits, Toronto has 33 hits to the Dodgers 28. And then as far as home runs are concerned, Dodgers have 7 and Toronto has 4. So this is becoming a great, great series. I continue to stress to watch it when you can. It's exciting. And to be honest, I really hope it goes to 7 games. But if it sticks with 6 with my prediction, then so be it. Because already it's been making history, okay? You don't see this on the regular, all right? All right. So moving on to a very interesting topic, and I was kind of debating on whether to even go into this, but I found an angle that I really want to focus on, and that is with the NBA gambling scandal that happened this past week. Now, the ugly underbelly when it comes to sports, and I'm sure everybody knows this, but unfortunately, there are people out there that will just bet on anything. When it comes to professional sports, that is the underbelly when it comes to sports in general, which is gambling. Now, not that long ago, let's say in the past few years, it has become legal for sports betting. And that's where you see all of these betting apps that are coming out of left and right. And there are platforms out there that have really talked about all that. So my whole angle is not to go into those specifics. What I'm going to share with you is giving you a pretty much rundown of the players at play, if you will, and let you know the significance of what each player is bringing to the table when it comes to this gambling scandal. Okay. So that way, when you hear the player or the person that is being said, you at least understand then after my little tidbit here that you know who they're talking about and why they're so significant. Okay. But as far as like betting is in scandals when it comes to this, like Tim Donaghy and what was that, 03 from my notes? Yeah, the NBA referee, that is a great documentary, by the way. I think it's on Netflix. I highly recommend. It's eye-opening. The Black Sox scandal, if we're sticking with baseball, back in 1919. The point shaming scandal when it came to the men's UK or University of Kentucky back in the late 40s, and then Operation Slapshot for the NHL back in 06. Like all like whatever doesn't. Sports in general, there's always going to be some sort of scandal when it comes to gambling. Okay, let's break it down. So the federal agents arrested NBA head coach of the Portland Trailblazers, Chauncey Billups, Miami guard Terry Rozier, and former NBA player Damon Jones for alleged crimes that involve illegal gambling on games and rigged poker games that have mafia ties. Okay, this investigation has been ongoing for a lot of years, and the shakedown happened last week, almost straight out of a movie. Okay, so Chauncey Billups. Chauncey Billups was a point guard, shooting guard in Colorado from 1995 to 97. He was drafted 3rd overall in 97 by the Boston Celtics. So very high draft pick. Okay, he played in the NBA from 97 to 2014. And in his early career, it just didn't really gel with the Celtics. And he kind of did like a little journey through different teams before he landed in Detroit. And that is significant because the Detroit Pistons in 2004 won the NBA championship, and Chauncey Billups won the MVP of the NBA Finals that year. Okay, that's significant in a lot of fronts. But the first front is that they defeated in 5 games the LA Lakers, where they at that time had a super team. Okay, they had Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Derek Fisher, and then 2 future NBA Hall of Famers, if they're not already in the Hall of Fame, on their way out of their ending of their careers, of Gary Payton and Karl Malone. Like 5 studs on the LA Lakers and this ragtag of Detroit Pistons team, which I remember watching this series. This is I was, not to date myself, but I am going to date myself. I was in high school, senior year in high school. I remember watching this series. I can remember the starting lineup. You have Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, Rick Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, and Chauncey Billups running the show at point guard. All right. They dominated with defense, and they ran the table to him. It's technically called a 5 series sweep, or is what the history books are calling that. So he was a 5-time All-Star, and he is in the Hall of Fame. And he became the head coach of Portland in 2021. Okay, that is Chauncey Billups, decorated player, now a head coach for some time. Okay. He's been accused on this poker thing that's been going on, which I'm not going to get into. But what the biggest thing when it comes to the NBA is that in March of 2023, he is accused of sharing information that he was going to tank his team purposefully to get a possible higher draft pick going into the next season. So he relayed that information to his co-conspirators, so that way they understood, oh, when it comes to Portland, they're purposefully tanking. So if you're going to bet, go ahead and bet against Portland because the coach is just pretty much throwing in the white towel. Clearly, you can't do that, okay? So that's Chauncey Billups. He's the most high-profile dude on this list, Okay. And which is sad. I think that's the biggest people that are talking about right now. It's like, what, you have generational wealth right now. Like, why would you do this? Like, what's the motivation? Or did you have no choice? Like, those are the questions that are circulating right now, especially at this recording. And we'll see what happens in the future as more information comes to light. Okay. So the next player profile is Terry Rozier. Now, Terry, he was also a point guard, shooting guard, played at Louisville from 2013 to 2015. He was also drafted in the first round, 16th overall by the Boston Celtics. He didn't really have a very outstanding career as far as others, but he went from Boston to Charlotte, and now he is currently with the Miami Heat. All right. Now, what makes Terry's story so interesting and alarming is that he is tied to what is known as prop bets. Now, what prop bet is a proposition bet, which means it doesn't really affect the outcome of wins and losses, but it's more focused on, let's say, a certain event, a player's statistics, or something of the sort where it's like, hey, I am going to bet under that Terry Rozier is going to score 15 points against, let's say he's with Miami, so let's say against the Cleveland Cavaliers, okay? I put a bet down. Terry Rozier pretty much, this in Charlotte though, I mentioned he went from Boston to Charlotte to Miami. He is accused of in Charlotte letting his co-conspirators know, like, hey, bet on the under for me tonight because I'm going to fake an injury and get out of the game in the first quarter, okay? And he did, and people knew that insider information. That is very, very wrong. I mean, that's what he's being accused of, okay? He prematurely removed himself specifically from a game against the Pelicans in the first quarter, all right? The last is Damon Jones, okay? Damon Jones, he was also a player. He played at Houston in college from 94 to 97, point guard, shooting guard. He was not drafted in the NBA, but found himself into the NBA. Much more storied journeyman than Chauncey Billups. But he became an assistant coach after his playing days. He actually was the assistant coach or one of the assistant coaches with the Cleveland Cavaliers when they won the championship in 2016. And it was currently when he was alleged for his crimes, he was an assistant coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. So what Damon did was, as an assistant coach for the Los Angeles Lakers, he gave non-public injury information to his co-conspirators, so that way they could bet on the opposing team that the Lakers were facing. In this case, it was the Milwaukee Bucks. And this non-public injury information was one of the star players, allegedly, because it wasn't disclosed on who the player was, but people can put together it was LeBron James. So Milwaukee won that game. Damon got a kickback or some sort of something, but that's what he is being accused of, okay? So those are the three players at play. Those are their backgrounds. Those are what they're doing. Now, the biggest takeaway is that not only is this investigation ongoing, but people have been saying that this is just the tip of the iceberg. And so I'll be very interested to see on how this is going to affect the league in general as the days continue, and to see what information gets to be shed to light. Because again, like, if you want to gamble, that's on you. I'm not going to be a platform that will either promote or condemn gambling. My only thing for you at the sound of my voice, or if you're looking into the screen right now, is just like, please only gamble what you can afford to lose. Okay? That's the only thing I'll share with that. You do you, but only gamble what you can afford to lose. Okay? So I hope that, like, what you know now, if you hear prop bets, if you hear those three names and what they're alleged about doing in the NBA, I hope you feel empowered now with your future conversations. But I do want to share some good news, is that the NBA Cup tips off this weekend. All right. The NBA Cup essentially is an in-season tournament that Commissioner Adam Silver wanted to do some sort of tournament at the beginning of the season to draw more fan interest, because before the NBA Cup, there wasn't very high interest outside of the diehard fans. And so this gives teams and more incentives to have like an in-season tournament. I have a great video for you to check out that I created last year that really dives into the NBA Cup at large. And so if you really want to know the ins and outs of that, I highly recommend watching that video that you can see the link on screen and also in the show notes in the description. Okay. So definitely check that out. But the group play starts this weekend, actually on Trick or Treat Friday, which is going to be fun. But yeah, just as far as like the early season, OKC is clicking on all cylinders as is expected. Gosh, there it is. Being 4-0 right now, but the Spurs, right, man, Victor Wembanyama on his going into his third year in the league, he is becoming a really strong force, which is exciting for the Spurs especially. And then they also had the Rookie of the Year last year on their squad too. So like, I think the Spurs could be that dark horse that I kind of didn't see coming, which I love. But yeah, the Warriors, they're third right now, 3-1. They look pretty strong as far as the West is concerned. And then, with the East, we'll see what's going on with that. Like Philly and Chicago are at the top of the standings right now, 3-0. Both respectively, but I'm just kind of like, okay, we'll see. I like that. Cleveland is still clicking on all cylinders, being 3-1. They're only lost to the Knicks, and they actually had quite a bit of injuries, so I'd be interested to see how they continue. But Indiana, I kind of talked about last week. They're 0-3 right now. Who's going to lead that team? That's not surprising. But what is surprising is the Celtics finally getting their first win last night from this recording against the Pelicans. Like, they're 1-3 right now. So it's interesting to see what comes of that. But yeah, the NBA Cup is this weekend, so that's going to be exciting. All right, finally, we're going to be talking very briefly about this topic, but I could not go without today's show without talking about it, and that is the third major firing of a college football head coach. And it's not even November yet. And if you've been following college football, last weekend, the LSU's head coach, Brian Kelly, was fired from his role as the head coach after their embarrassing loss to their fellow SEC opponent, Texas A&M, 49-25, and they were at home. So LSU now joins other top-tier programs when it comes to college football for head coaching jobs with Penn State and Florida. And it's just, I think, a sign of what would be commonplace moving forward now with NIL being in full swing. And schools looking at, I was about to say teams, but schools essentially looking at their stock value of like, hey, if this is the downward trend, we're not going to wait till the end of the season, because recruiting literally starts in the middle of the season. And so to try to get top tier talent, if they see a losing team and they see the man leading the charge in that department still on the squad, that could hurt that potential player being on said squad, right? So you see that with Penn State was the first domino, then you saw Florida, and then now LSU. So now you got like three highly coveted roles when it comes to college football now available going into the new season. And we'll see how this plays out. As usual, you just got to see. But I wanted to make note of it because this could be more to come, essentially, because when November hits, that's usually you'll see the first college football playoff rankings, which will be released next Tuesday when we do our show. So that's going to be fun. You can see on the screen the right now the current top 25 teams, with Ohio State and Indiana being 1 and 2 respectively after week 10. So yeah, LSU had high hopes as well, and they're not even ranked now in the top 25. Moving forward, we'll see how many more dominoes are going to fall based off of like looking forward to next season. But yeah, Brian Kelly is out at LSU, which is kind of wild. Now we're moving on to the questions. And please remember, if you have any questions, just please post your questions in the comments, and then I would answer to the best of my ability in the next week's episode. So today we have Suhasu8560 again. Suhasu has 3 questions that we're going to go answer pretty quickly here. But the first one, they ask, coming from a cricket background where all rounders are common, so essentially pitchers and batters together, all rounders, I'm trying to understand why Shohei Ohtani is considered a generational talent in baseball. How rare is it for one player to be elite at both pitching and hitting? As a clarification, I'm not trying to play down his achievements, just trying to understand the reason. Excellent question. It is so difficult to pitch and hit at the highest level in baseball. It is just, I don't know how to really express the amount of difficulty without myself playing at that high level. So I think one of the ways you have to look at it is that when you're pitching on average between 75 miles an hour, if that's your changeup, to a 4-seam fastball that is, let's say, 95 to 100 on average, and you throw those range of pitches for about 6.5 to 7 innings on average. As a starting pitcher, like, there's a reason why you have a 5-man rotation when it comes to starting pitchers, because your body, in doing that motion left and right, it needs time to heal. And so there's that as far as a starting pitcher. That's why you definitely see there's always how many days of rest that a pitcher can still hit that velocity with the way they're torquing their body at a high level that these batters cannot hit, okay? Not only the velocity, but the control of the ball, like to have the control on your hand to do a splitter, a slider, or even a curveball. That's very difficult on your body. So you do that, but then you also try to go to the plate and trying to hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, like your hand-eye coordination to time it just right and to swing at it and to torque your back and your hips. Like, that's why sometimes it's really cool to see the slow or high-speed cameras that these hitters are hitting a baseball. Like, it's literally a full swing motion to just boom, belt that sucker out of there. So that is why, like, it is, you don't see it, because like you want to either be really good at one or the other. The fact that Ohtani is peak, I'm not saying, like, it would be a little bit more, what's the right word? It'd be probably even be better to understand, like, man, he's really good at pitching, but he's not so good at batting, but he can get on base. That would be more realistic. You can see a pitcher being so dominant and then just be okay at bat. If they're not dominant on the mound, they'll either be a relief pitcher, but they wouldn't be a starting pitcher. Ohtani's a starting pitcher. But the fact that Ohtani can lead off, he leads off the Dodgers right now, and the Joker is hitting home runs, doubles, like, what do you, like, I just can't express, like, you just don't see it. And as I said at the very beginning of the episode, the dude made a whole rule. I mean, it's not Ohtani Rule, but it's commonly known as the Ohtani Rule, because he's just that incredibly good at both. And so I think cricket's a little bit different, and we can go into that at a later episode. But as far as baseball is concerned, I mean, from all the walks of life that I've had, I mean, if you want to be a pitcher and you want to be a starting pitcher, it's almost like that is literally what you do from day one. You just train your body to just build the mechanisms, the muscle memory to focus on that and not hitting. Okay, this guy is a generational talent because of it. So great question. I hope that helped. I'm sure there's other avenues out there that can really dive into the mechanics and also the analytics when it comes to starting pitchers and then also batters and why it's so difficult to do both. But I hope that really helped. Your second question is, does interconference football take place in college too? If so, do they have a structured way of deciding it, like how NFL does for the 17 games. So now we're talking about football for college football. And instead of like last week, I answered this person's question based off of the different conferences, Big 10, SEC, ACC, and Big 12 were the Power Four. They're asking, does interconference football take place? Yes. How it is structured is literally between athletic directors within the universities. That's why you saw another great example is Ohio State and Texas played in week 1. Ohio State being out of the Big 10, Texas is out of the SEC. That particular non-conference is what they call it. Non-conference game was scheduled like 5 years out or even more or less so. Like it's usually the schedule of your non-conference opponents are scheduled out before the season even starts. And it's typically a home and away agreement where it's like, yeah, Texas is going to come up to Columbus, Ohio and play the Buckeyes. And then the next year, the Buckeyes are going to travel down to Austin, Texas to play the Longhorns in their stadium. So it's usually a home and away series. Once that is done, then they go to the next one. Now, you will also have these group of 5 opponents, which are just off the top of my head, like you have the MAC, Mid-American Conference. Like you have like a Bowling Green, a Ball State, an Akron, like some of these lower tier schools that's in the group of 5 would play these bigger schools because for them, it's a huge paycheck. It's like, yeah, we'll take, let's say, again, it's an arbitrary number, but we'll take $250K for you to beat us up. So that way we can invest that money into renovating our workout room, right? So that happens. When it comes to the Big 10, those usually the first 4 games, not all, but usually the first 4 games are non-conference opponents. Okay. The SEC does a little bit differently. SEC usually does conference play fresh out the gate. Sometimes it's usually like week 2, but then like later in the season, like I'd say late November. Yeah, late November, they'll schedule a non-conference lower tiered opponent, and it's typically around their homecoming to assuredly have them win when they have homecoming. There's a debate about that, but that's essentially what that is. And that has always been around the athletic directors. Now, this question is actually interesting because going forward, we're learning about the college football playoff, right? We talked about last week based on your question about how it's polled. It's literally based on who you play. And if you're playing against like non-high quality opponents because your AD doesn't want to lose against other non-conference opponents that could be pretty good, then it's like, well, where's your resume? Like, yeah, you may be undefeated, but 4 of your 12 games that you had on your schedule are against a group of 5 opponents that really aren't that good. So where is your quality wins to help you rise your stock amidst the other top 25 teams in the country? Okay. So it's not a formulaic approach when it comes to the NFL scheduling because the freedom that they have is they have the teams in the league that they have. They have 32 teams in the league and they have a system of how they schedule those, the schedule out, which I do have a video that you can check on how that is done, which I highly recommend. Okay. But that's a great question as far as non-conference opponents. So we'll see how the college football playoff really affects that. Because again, that's still in its infant stage. And to see if more athletic directors are going to schedule their non-conference opponents that has a higher quality stock with their name to it. Okay. All right. And the third question you ask, can there be a situation where all the teams in the college football are from one single conference, say Big 10, if they are ranked top in the polls? Short answer is no. And the reason why is because the College Football Playoff Committee purposefully wanted every conference Power 5 Power 4 now. When the Pac-12 comes back, it will be Power 5. They wanted to make sure that all conference winners, championship winners, will get a seat at the college football playoff table. Okay. So you have your at least 4 to 5 And then you have a group of 5, like I mentioned earlier, those lower schools, like whoever has the best regular season / conference winner, they would automatically get a bid into the 12-team playoff. Okay. So right there, you have about sans in the Pac-12. You have 5 schools from different conferences guaranteed a spot in the tournament. Now, could it be heavily favored to one conference over the other? Yeah, because based off of like how the conference itself had elevated and based off of like how many quality wins you have, all that. And there are some networks that make a point to point that out of like, oh, this conference has the most teams in the college football playoff. Like, okay, well, great. At the end of the day, you just want to see good quality matchups, and also these schools that do their best to get to the playoff to get, exposure for their program. Like last year, SMU, Southern Methodist University out of Dallas, right? They were conference champion. They lost to Penn State in the second round, but that was actually great for the university because they were on the national spotlight along with Boise State. Boise State also was the champion of their conference, and they got a first round bye, and they had a great national exposure. Didn't get far. They lost, but that's where I like the fact that some of these smaller schools at least can play on the big stage, whereas before in the past that wasn't even an option. It was like, how can you get into a bowl game? Okay. So if you want more information on the college football playoff as far as, how it is seeded and how that stuff, I would highly recommend my other video that talks about the college football playoff. It needs an update just because the new rule going into this season is that they are going to reseed after the first round. Last year, that wasn't the case. The bracket is what the bracket was. But now we're going forward, it is going to be reseeding, meaning that the top 4 teams, 1, 2, 3, 4, whoever comes out of the first round, whoever's the lowest rank to the highest rank will go from, let's say a 12 seed wins in the first round. Well, that 12 seed would play the number 1 team, okay? As opposed to last year, the eighth seed beat the number 9 seed, and the 8th seed played the number 1 team in next, just because of the way the bracket was, okay? So definitely check that one out, so that way you get to understand what the college football playoff is going to be like, okay? Okay. As we land the plane on this wonderful episode, what's coming up next for the channel? The ebook is almost done. Let's go. Yeah, 160 pages later, we are now at the finish line. And so I just have to do a little bit more designs to it, but all 160 pages are there. So I predict I just need one more good session with it, and then that would be available hopefully by the end of the World Series, because that's always been the goal, is to make sure that these ebooks are ready for the end of the year. And so once that is done, you will definitely get a notification to let you know that that is going to be available online for you. And yeah, it has literally every single World Series matchup. There's just so much information. It's incredible. I highly recommend it if you are a big baseball fan, especially Major League Baseball fan. But that would be always updated every single year, which is the whole mindset, is to update these ebooks, these championship ebooks. Right now we have the NBA on there, and we have the NFL on there. NHL will be next year, I promise. I just couldn't do the NBA and the NHL at the same time. But yeah, the Major League Baseball will be done, and so that will be updated every subsequent year for you to have. So can't wait for that. And so, to close this episode out, the World Series will be completed next week when we do our next episode. So it'd be exciting to see who's going to raise that trophy. The NBA Cup starts this weekend on Halloween, and the MLS Cup round happened already, where Chicago and Portland, the both respective 8 seeds, have won, and so they will play in the first round to the number 1 seeds. So that's going to be awesome. That's happening this weekend, match 1 of the best of 3 series. So catch Lurks Lessons Show on YouTube and on Spotify, and happy learning, and I'll see you next week.